Okay, and the final bit of research into alternative nutritional medicine, whatever you want to call it. Everyone knows about the med diet, the Mediterranean diet, how good it is for us. You know, it's all about fresh olive oil, it's about nuts, seeds, fresh vegetables, fish, right? But they've now done some research which has demonstrated that it even gets kick-started if you also supplement with coenzyme Q10. And that alone counters cognitive decline, reduces inflammation, which, as we know, inflammation is linked to most every disease, from heart problems, arthritis, through to some cancers. And it also stops deterioration of muscles and tissues. And the only thing is they say, well, but it is important, you stick with it, which isn't really very surprising because nothing works if you don't stick with it. But they've found that that really gives a super boost to the med diet and its many benefits just by adding that supplement. And again, incredible impact on so many parts of our bodies and how incredibly important it is. It's and they say they don't really understand why it works, but they do think it's because it lowers lipids or blood fats, which protects again from our old friend oxidative stress, where again free radicals are not being sucked up by our systems.
This particular substance, coenzyme Q10, is so important, and particularly important for heart disease, so little understood by medicine. I mean, one of the interesting things that happens with statins is that it lowers CoQ10 levels, and that can have catastrophic effects, which is why they add them in now to a lot of statins, or they suggest people supplement with CoQ10. So now we're seeing a wider application of this miracle substance, that it's just helpful in all kinds of aspects of aging, not just your heart. So it really has to be in everybody's vitamin drawer, anybody over 50, I would say.
And again, look, this is yet more research, and we come up with this every week. There is yet more research that this stuff works. And it's proper research, it's proper science, as they would like to see. It's not been tampered with. There's no spin associated with it. And it's working.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't make money for the drugs companies, you see.
Absolutely.
Talking of which, let's go back to the old friends, the drugs, and especially the opioids, the painkillers, which has caused an absolute epidemic, especially in America, where many, many hundreds of thousands of people are hooked on these drugs, because I think they affect the pleasure part of the brain. And one reason for the epidemic, apart from people are getting them illicitly on the web, is that doctors themselves have forgotten they've made out a prescription for them. And this is one reason why we've been seeing so many more drugs out there. They did a survey amongst doctors and who admitted that they had actually, in retrospect, had actually prescribed more of these drugs than they realised. But I know, Lynne, you want to talk, because opioids are painkillers, and I know you want to say something about reducing pain.
Well, I think there's a lot of things to say about pain and the treatment of pain. One of the amazing things that we've just unearthed, that's going to be in an upcoming issue of What Doctors Don't Tell You, is that a good amount of pain has nothing to do with a mechanical cause. This was extraordinary. There's some amazing research showing that things like back pain, which affects 80% of adults at some point in their lives, a huge percentage of it is caused by bacteria. Now, again, a study demonstrating that the simple bacteria that causes acne also somehow gets into the bones and causes back pain. There's also incredible other evidence that bacteria, different kinds of strains of bacteria, could be behind things like ankylosing spondylitis, which can be crippling. It's a form of arthritis that can land people in a wheelchair. And we certainly have a subject who was given that kind of forecast in his 20s, and he's now playing squash. All he needed to do was to go on a low-starch diet, and he completely reversed his situation. Aside from bacteria and things like that, infections, bugs, Another big cause of pain is stress. You know, big stress with life events. I mean, big cause of pelvic pain, which again affects millions, is just muscles that are chronically tight through stress. And treating the stress, treating the tight muscles, sorts the problem. But the other thing I wanted to say about pain, too, is the standard treatment of pain. Aside from opioids being terrible, addictive drugs and causing major addiction in the West now, particularly in America, there's also the other problem of things like paracetamol. We always think of paracetamol and aspirin as being, the benign painkillers. But there's new evidence, again, we just recently unearthed in this issue, our current issue, showing that paracetamol also blunts our emotions. It doesn't just take care of the physical pain, it also blunts emotional pain and emotions per se. Makes us less caring, makes us less fair, all kinds of things like that. And that makes you think, wow, even a simple painkiller like that can have huge knock-on effects.
And one of the researchers, we like to have a theme to our podcast, and I suppose in a way this guy says it better than us. Because at the end of his study into this overprescribing of opioids, which, as I say, the doctors didn't realise they were doing, but he said most believe they're doing the right thing, but we need to directly address this thinking to be sure they are not part of the problem. And I think that's it, isn't it, in a nutshell, really. Doctors are trying to do the best. They think they are doing the best, of course. But, often they're not because of the tools they've been given, because of the drugs they've been given.
Well, and luckily, too, we're now moving toward the whole idea of integrative medicine. And that's taking off much more in the US than it is in the UK right now, but it's seeping into the UK, too, and other parts of the West, where the doctor essentially is widening his toolkit. He's saying diet, exercise, supplements, these are tools, too. These are major tools, and maybe I can use these as a first port of call.
And on that point, I think we have to get the regulatory bodies a bit more up to speed as well. I mean, for many doctors who don't prescribe enough drugs, as we know in the UK, they can face sanctions by the General Medical Council. And, because they're not seen to be practicing medicine set out by the various bodies, which includes, enormous amounts of drugs. If they're not doing that, then they can face the rap. And this is so the whole system needs to be reviewed from the disciplinary groups down. Well,
and the problem is the disciplinary groups and the people who supposedly regulate, they're all part of the drug industry. It's now been the situation for a number of years now where, as we've talked about earlier on earlier podcasts, where most of the people in the Food and Drug Administration or the Centers for Disease Control are ex-drug people. And so they're not gamekeepers anymore. The poachers are there instead of the gamekeepers. So, what I think we really need, Brian? I think we need a new campaign, like the Me Too movement. We need something that really liberates medicine. Hashtag liberate medicine.
Okay, good. And we'll bring the doctors with us.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, look, I think that's about it for another week. And I think we put the world to rights in slightly less than 30 minutes. So thanks again for listening or watching, if that's the case. And we hope to catch up with you again soon. In the meantime, check us out and subscribe to our wonderful magazine if you haven't already done so. So from me, Brian Hubbard, farewell.
And from me, Lynne McTaggart. See you next time.